When you think of Wehrmacht tanks, what usually comes to mind are the boxy bodies of Tigers and the predatory silhouettes of Panthers. Another vehicle that immediately comes to mind is the Panzerkampfwagen IV, the workhorse of German armored divisions during World War II. But in the early years of the war, during the invasion of Poland and the Battle of France, the Wehrmacht relied on a different vehicle, the early Panzers. These were adopted back in 1934 and were nowhere near as fearsome as their successors. The Panzer I weighed just 5 tons, had a weak engine, and was armed only with machine guns. Even then, it was clear the army needed heavier armor with more firepower, but developing it would take time. Building off of the first Panzer, German engineers designed a new, larger vehicle. The undercarriage was completely reworked. Instead of 6 road wheels arranged in 3 paired bogies, they used a more reliable setup with 5 individual wheels on leaf springs. The engine was swapped out for a more powerful one to keep the tank mobile. But the biggest change from the Panzer I was the turret. Gone were the machine guns. In their place sat a 20mm autocannon, complete with all the essentials, from a recoil mechanism to a shoulder rest. The new gun needed more room, so the turret was made more spacious and the turret ring was enlarged. The new tank, designated Panzer II, entered service in 1936. Almost immediately, it became clear that it was far from perfect. When the Spanish Civil War broke out, Germany responded by supplying Panzer I tanks to the forces of Francisco Franco. Combat revealed that the Soviet 45mm guns used by the Spanish Republic could punch right through Franco's tanks and destroy them with ease. But substantially up-armoring the Panzer II was off the table due to the limitations of its suspension. Later modifications did receive minor upgrades, but nothing that could stop large-caliber rounds. Even so, the Panzer II remained in mass production. By the time World War II began, it was the most numerous tank in Wehrmacht units. In the early battles, it proved to be fast, reliable, and reasonably effective. But as early as the Battle of France, it became clear that the design left a lot to be desired. Even the most heavily armored version, the Ausführung F, was still vulnerable to tank guns and anti-tank artillery. By the war's midpoint, the Wehrmacht had withdrawn most of its Panzer IIs from frontline combat units. Their turrets, however, found a second life as fixed fortifications along the Atlantic Wall, bolstering coastal defenses against the imminent Allied attack. Like other interwar tanks, the Panzer II appears in War Thunder at the early ranks. In the German tech tree, you'll find the C and F variants, along with a few extra models, including a version of the Ausführung C in Afrika Korps livery. The strengths of the Panzer II are its decent mobility and solid cannon. The 140 horsepower engine gets the tank moving pretty quickly, and up to around 40 kilometers an hour, even over rough ground. Reverse speed isn't anything to write home about, but it's good enough to get you out of sight at medium and close ranges after taking a shot. The main gun's caliber is not particularly impressive, but sub-caliber rounds of the Panzergranate 40 belt can punch through the frontal armor of many opponents you might encounter. Soviet BT and T-26 tanks, American M2A2s, as well as open-topped SPGs and SPAA. All of them can be eliminated with just a couple of rounds anywhere you hit them. But medium tanks like the Japanese Chiha or the Soviet T-28 are a whole different story. You can try to hit their weak spots, like the flat armor areas to the left and the right of the gun mantlet, but the safest option is to flank them or just fall back. Survivability of the tank is pretty low. The C variant has just 3 crew members, protected by only 10 to 14 millimeters of armor in the front. The Ausführung F is much better off, with up to 35 millimeters of armor. But that thickness only really matters at long range, where the Panzer's own gun is next to useless, especially against heavily armored threats. To take out opponents that are better protected than a BT, light SPAAs, or trucks, you have to get very close and personal with them. And at close range, you can't rely on your armor anymore. It's all about positioning and mobility. So the general strategy for the Panzer II goes something like this. Find a little dip in the terrain, wait for the enemy to get close, destroy a couple of tanks with a burst to their sides, then change your position. Each belt for your 20mm gun holds just 10 rounds, and the reload takes a full 6 seconds. That's plenty of time for the enemy to spot you and get off 1 or 2 shots of their own. Super heavy tanks and amphibious vehicles need a different approach. They have big fighting compartments and large crews. The Panzer's autocannon is an excellent weapon against them, but here's the catch. With big targets, hitting them in the side is absolutely critical. And try to keep a couple of rounds in the belt just in case you manage to knock out most of the enemy crew, but not the tank itself. Sooner or later, one of the surviving crew members will switch seats to replace the gunner or driver. That's when you need to be ready to take another shot to finish the job if you can't get to a new position in time. In real life, the Panzer II played a huge role in the development of the German tank industry. And in War Thunder, it serves as an excellent light tank that is easy to learn and quite effective in the hands of both veterans and newcomers. So, do you enjoy fighting in one of the earliest Panzers? Let us know in the comments down below.